Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed at Hipmix 88.9 WEIU.
Welcome to the Tales of Music and Film. My name is DJ Apollo, or aka Christian Taylor, and welcome to episode number 43. Now, to tell you the truth, I cannot believe that I'm already in my 5th series on my podcast, and it's been an amazing journey so far, and I've said it a million times over, and I'm going to say it again, I'm loving every minute of this. This has been a fantastic experience, and today we got a very special recording. I'm so excited with today's film that I'm going to be covering. And so a little backstory for you, which led me to want to talk about this particular movie. I went back home this past weekend. I got to catch up with my family, got to hang out with them a lot, especially my little sister. I got to catch up with her a lot. I got to give her a very nice necklace for her 8th birthday, and she loved it. It was a fantastic weekend, and we decided to have a family movie night. We ended up watching 2 movies. The first one we watched was this love comedy that was directed by Robert Zemeckis. It came out in 1984. It stars Michael Douglas. It's called Romancing the Stone, which I actually thought that was a pretty good film. I thought it was really funny, you know? I mean, it was a good, I really enjoyed it. And then the second one we watched was I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, this is a movie that I have been wanting to watch for a good while now, and because if you have listened to my Scream review, which I highly recommend, I am a huge fan of horror. I consider it to be one of the best genres of all time. I love horror. Some of my favorite films are like The Thing, Aliens, the first Halloween, Christine. There's so many out there that are just masterpieces. Like, Scream. It's just like, dude, the list is endless. I love me some good slasher films, and that's exactly what this film is. And this movie came out a year after Scream was released. This film came out on October 17th of 1997, and to go a little back in time for you a little bit, the slasher genre, I think it most likely started in the 60s when the movie Psycho came out. I think a lot of diehard film lovers would agree that was the film that it was kind of the origins of the slasher genre really coming into its own form, but it really did not get popular until John Carpenter did the first Halloween back in 1978, and that was the film I think that really brought slasher films into its own. Like from that point forward, it got famous real quick. I think after the first Halloween, everybody was trying to copy the success of that film, but around the time the early mid 80s showed up, the slasher genre really started to take a nosedive because we got to the point because you had the Nightmare on Elm Street series, you had Friday the 13th series that were literally, kind of taking a lot of inspiration, especially Friday the 13th was taking a lot of inspiration from the Halloween films. And all three movie series, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th, all 3 of these franchises, by the time the mid-80s showed up, the slasher genre was basically dead because these films weren't scary anymore. It was just gore montages of our villains just murdering all these nameless teenagers that weren't good people, and we didn't really care about them that much anyway. It was just that over and over again. Like, the original idea to why slasher was so good was dead and kind of forgotten about. So by the time the late 80s showed up, mid to late 80s, the genre was basically dead in the water. And it was dead, I think, for a good while until the mid 90s showed up when Wes Craven directed the original Scream film. And I think that movie single-handedly brought the slasher genre back to life. Like, Scream is an absolute masterpiece. Like, Wes Craven, I think, single-handedly brought the slasher theme back to its roots and showed how it should be done. And Scream was like a big hit, and it made slasher films popular again. And now we cut to I Know What You Did Last Summer, which came out the following year. And I think this film also did an amazing job of showing how a slasher film can be done. And I cannot wait to dive into this movie. So, like I said, the movie was released in '97, and it's one of 3 films. There was a direct sequel to this the following year called I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. And then there was this third installment in 2006 with none of the other actors from the first 2. So I don't know what that one was all about, but there's a Buffy the Vampire fan page that I follow on Facebook, and I actually made a post on there because, as you know, I'll get into the cast, but one of the main characters in this is played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, who played Buffy. And there's a fan page that I follow on Facebook that has like thousands of people on there, and people post either Buffy stuff or they post other films that the other actors in the show were in. And I made a post on there talking about, my experience with I Know What You Did Last Summer, calling it, I called it a hidden gem from the 90s. And I think it was so funny because I had like 30 plus, like 40 plus people, mostly older women, it looked like, just commenting on my post saying like, bro, this is not a hidden gem. Like for us, this was a 90s hit. So I just thought it was so funny. Like I saw this one comment. This one lady was like, "So you kids are calling it a hidden gem?" Like for me, this was a A+ quality film. It's just I just thought that was so funny. Like there are so many people out there that hold this film very dear, and after watching it this last weekend, I can understand why 100%. So let's go into the cast for a minute, shall we? So the movie revolves around our 4 main characters, and I'm telling you right now, I think this film had the best cast you could have for a 90s slasher film. Like, you have Sarah Michelle Gellar, who's literally amazing and breathtaking in everything she stars in. Like, dude, Sarah was at the top of the world in the 90s. Like, the late 90s, man, like, 1997 was a very good year for her because that year Buffy started. She was in Scream 2 and this all in the same year, and then from that point, she was in Buffy continued. She was in a movie called Cruel Intentions, which came out in 1999. Then when the early 2000s showed up, she did the 2 live action Scooby-Doo movies. And then also in the early 2000s, she did the Grudge. She did 2. She ended up doing 2 Grudge movies, and she's actually been making a comeback. She kind of like took a break from acting for a while because she did a show with Robin Williams. It was called The Crazy Ones. It was canceled after 1 season. And Robin Williams committed suicide, I think, not long after the first season finished airing. And I think Sarah said that took a toll on her. And I think she ended up taking a break from acting for pretty much a decade at this point. She took a break from acting for about, 7 to 8 years. She did a movie last year called Do Revenge. And then now she's doing this new show called Wolfpack. And now she's been making this epic comeback, and she's been in millions of interviews all over the internet. Like, I've watched a couple of them, and it's good to see her back on the map again. She seems happier than ever, and I think she's just an all-around really good person, and I'm a huge fan of her. And as we continue down the cast list, next up we have Freddie Prinze Jr., who is, funny enough, Sarah Michelle Gellar's husband. And I think this is how they met, was when they filmed this movie. They actually just celebrated their 20th anniversary just this last year. And in the movie, Freddie Prinze Jr. plays a character named Ray Bronson. And to go back to Sarah for a minute, her character's name is Helen Shivers. And we continue further down the cast list. Number 3 up in line is Jennifer Love Hewitt. She plays a character named Julie James. And then we have our 4th main character, Ryan Phillippe, who plays a character named Barry Williams. And we have an additional main character who ends up being the killer, who is chasing after our 4 main characters. His name is Muse Watson. He plays a character named Ben Willis in the movie, and he ends up being the killer who goes after our 4 main characters. So now that we've basically talked about our the main cast in this film, the main characters, let's get into the plot. So to summarize the plot for you, so here is the basic Google description. A year after running over a fisherman and dumping his body into the water, 4 friends get back together when Julie receives a frightening letter telling her that their crime was seen. While pursuing who he thinks is responsible for the letter, Barry is run over by a man with a meat hook. The bloodletting only increases from there as the killer with the meat hook continues to stalk Julie, Helen, and Roy. And that is really the basic plot of this whole thing. It's like there is this mystery man with a meat hook who is hunting down our 4 main characters a year after when they ran over someone on the side of the road. So to go a little further back for you, so the movie opens up with these 4 friends partying on a beach because they're graduating from high school, getting ready to go to college and start the next phase in their lives. And Barry gets really drunk and he asks Ray if he can drive everybody home, and he's like, sure. And Ray and the girls are sitting in the back, and Barry is driving, and not Barry, like, Ray is driving the car while Barry and the girls are sitting in the back, and Barry opens the roof window, and he's outside, yelling and cheering while holding a bottle of booze in his hand. He drops it on Ray's lap, and Ray looks down to grab it, and he's not looking up at the road. Then there's this mystery man in the middle of the road, and they crash into him. And they think that he's dead, and they don't want their lives ruined because they know if they call the police, they're all going to get arrested, especially Barry because, he's drunk. So they're screwed. They're covered in blood, and they're all panicking. Now, all 4 of the actors' performances felt so real in this scene because it was intense as heck because they're freaking out. They don't know what to do, and it was very intense. And Barry starts losing his mind. He's like, let's just get rid of the body. Let's just go dump in the water. The current will carry him away from the island, So they pick up the body, they carry it down to the dock. Well, they put it in the trunk, and then they drive down to the beach where the dock is. And they're getting ready to push the body into the water, and then he wakes up and starts grabbing Helen, and then Barry runs in and pushes the dude into the water, and then that's the end of it. Like, Barry has to jump in the water because the mystery man took Helen's crown from her, because the movie opens up with the 4 friends at this contest that Helen has entered in because she's modeling or something, and she ends up winning first place. She's planning on going to New York City to further her career in modeling, and when the guy was pushed in the water, he grabbed her crown, so Barry jumps in the water to get it back, and he just sees the body sinking in the water, so he thinks, okay, he's dead. So he swims back up, and the friends just go, and they swear an oath to never bring this night up ever again. And then the movie has a time jump about a year later, and having to keep this secret has really taken a toll on the 4 friends. Like, it opens up, like, the year Time Jump opens with Julie going to college, and she's an absolute mess. Like, her life is completely screwed up. She's not talking to anyone. She's not talking to her mom, and her school life is non-existent. She's failing her classes, and she just looks miserable because having to keep this secret has been taking a toll on her. And then that's when she gets home. She gets a note, and she opens it and says, "I know what you did last summer." So it ends with her going back, finding her other friends and trying to figure out like who is messing around with them. And that's the main plot of the entire film. You're wondering like, who's after them. And right off the bat, I have to talk about, the way this film was shot. Like, when I made my Facebook post on the Buffy fan page, like this movie, every scene to me felt like a painting. Some of my favorite shots, I think for me, was the opening where our four main characters were on the beach. Like, it was gorgeous, and I really love that 90s kind of tint that you see on the screen. Like, dude, this movie has aged like fine wine. Like, it looks amazing. And, because I've taken a lot of film classes here at my school that I go to, and now that I've taken, all those classes, like I notice all these little things about filmmaking that I notice, like, oh my gosh, that's such a sick camera move they just did there. Like I notice these little things I think most people would not notice, but man, the shots in this film is breathtaking. And I'm telling you right now, there is a crap ton of intense scenes throughout this whole thing. Some of my favorite scenes in this is the mystery man stalking our main characters. It's done so well. One of my favorite moments is when Helen is going back into her house, like, to go to sleep, and she's walking out the staircase, and the killer, you see, like, the camera angle is right in the middle of the staircase, so you see her coming up, and you can see on the second floor the killer walks down the hallway into her bedroom, and he enters the doorway right before she hits that next flight of stairs. And dude, that was just some amazing camera work. Like, I'll never forget watching this with my mom. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a sick shot. And the story was, it was amazing. The story had me on the edge of my seat the whole hour and 45. So the movie's an hour and 40 minutes. And I'm telling you, this movie felt like 10 minutes. I loved it. And like I said, the story had me questioning who it was the entire time. Then when it's finally revealed who it is, like it was very cool. Like nothing was left like, unanswered. Like this film answered all of the questions I had in the best way possible. Like when you're doing a film like this, for me, it's like you have to think of a very creative way, to why the killer is going after you. Like, what is their motive or reason? It has to be something very important or very specific. Like, the reason why I think the Scream killers were so interesting is just like, it wasn't like, some over-the-top reason really why they were going after Sydney and her friends. They were just a couple of guys who watched way too many horror movies, and they decided to make the horror movies they were watching a real reality. And that, to me, I thought was a very interesting concept. And what this film does with the plot twist of you find out the guy who has been hunting them the entire time was the guy they hit on the road. And you find out the guy that they hit is actually a killer who was out in the middle of the road that night because he had just killed someone, and he was never caught because you find out that the person he killed was labeled as suicide. So he got away with it, and he got mad. Like, he goes after our four friends because he's seen their faces, and he wants to get back at them for what they did to him last summer. And, it's just and I thought, for me, I thought that was very interesting, they got in the way of his plans, so he goes out after him seeking revenge, like, and I thought that was a very cool concept. And I'm like, dude, the costuming for this, like, the killer's costume is this, like, fisher suit that covers the entire body. He wears this fisherman hat that covers his whole face. The whole movie, you have no idea who it is, and he uses this giant sharp hook to kill people. And dude, I'm telling you right now, this movie's R rating is very earned because, dude, I had no idea going into this how violent it was going to be. I was expecting, maybe a bit of blood, but this movie gets pretty gory. Like, there's literally a scene towards the end where the killer is going after Helen, and she's like running. She runs into her sister's clothes shop, and she's banging on the door to let her in. And then she tells her sister to go lock the back door, and of course her sister goes alone, breaking the horror movie rule: never go anywhere by yourself. Anyway, she goes to lock the back door, and of course the killer is already in there, and he pops up behind her, slices her throat. Then, like, a scene later, you see him dragging her down the hall, like he gouged his hook in her stomach, and now he's just dragging her across the floor. I'm just like, holy cow! This went from 1 to 10. This went to 100, just like that. Like, this film had some pretty violent moments, and I think for me, what really got me invested was the characters themselves. Like, going back to what I was saying earlier, the actors in this all brought their A game. I thought every performance in this was amazing. Sarah was amazing as usual, and same as everybody else. Like, Jennifer, like, dude, the way she portrayed Julie, what she was going, like, she was basically kind of she was the final girl of this movie. And her performance in this blew my mind. It felt so real and very emotional, and I wanted her to win. Like, I wasn't really cheering for all four of the friends. Like, going back to Barry for a minute, like, Barry, like, the actor, like, Ryan did an amazing job playing Barry. Like, Barry is one of those stereotypical, like, he's not, well, I'll put it like this. Barry's one of those stereotypical characters who comes from a rich family, and doesn't take responsibility for his actions. And he was the one who came up with the idea of dumping the body. He's just kind of like whatever with it. Like, he's really a jerk, and you find that out pretty quickly. He's not a nice dude. He has a very psychotic nature to him. Like, when the friends get together trying to figure out who's going after him, they have an idea that the person who's after them is a friend of theirs named Max Newick, because when some of the friends are dragging the body and trying to hide it from Max, because what happens is Max comes driving up down the road, and this is taking place at night, by the way, so there's like no traffic. It's late at night. Max comes driving up in the truck, and then Ray, Freddie Prince's character, goes over to distract him while the other friends hide the body from him. And they're not exactly friends. Like, Max despises all four of them. Like, I think Max had a thing for Jennifer's character, Julie. But, Barry was a big bully, like, towards them. And you can tell right away that Barry and Max do not like each other in any way, shape, or form, and Barry bullies them, and they distract him. Then he just drives off in the truck, and he was the only person who was there that night who could have possibly seen the body, but he didn't. But anyway, the four friends think that Max is the one going after him. Instead of, like, trying to find evidence, like, Barry just assumes it's him. And he finds them at his job where he's a fisherman, and he's boiling some fish, or what, like, he's storing fish away. Barry just comes walking into his shop, and then he's like, can we talk to a man in the back room? They go in the back room, and then he just, chokeholds Max, shoves him against the wall, and he's like, "You listen to me. You mess with us again, I'll kill you." You know, like Barry just goes from psychopath very quickly. And he literally grabs a meat hook and puts it to Max's throat, threatening his life. Just like, dude, I was not rooting for Barry at all. Like, he treated, Julie and Helen like complete garbage. And I just cannot believe, like, at the beginning of the movie, him and Helen are dating, right? And then during the year time jump, you find out that they broke up. And they sort of like get back together at the end. And I'm just like, Helen, why do you want to be with this guy? He is a complete psycho who, how many people has he threatened at this point? He's not a good person. But anyway, and not long after that scene, Max is killed by Ben. And dude, I'm telling you, Max's death scene is gruesome as heck. But before I get into that, I'll give off the actor's name. The actor who played Max is Johnny Galecki, who I was actually very surprised to see him in this movie because the only thing I know him in is Big Bang Theory. And he was also in the Christmas Vacation film with Chevy Chase. And going back, man, his death scene's pretty gruesome. Like, Ben sneaks in because the room's filled up with steam because Max is boiling the fish or something, hard boiling them or something, I don't know. And the room's all full of steam, so Max can't see if someone enters the room. So Ben comes walking in and then literally hooks Max right in the face and drags him across the floor. Like, dude, it was gruesome. Like I said, this movie earned that R rating, and it does not hold back. The team used that R rating, I think, to their full advantage. And it worked, to say the least. Now I wanted to get into the finale of this film. The best part of this film for me is the finale. So now we cut to the finale where two of our main characters have been killed, and it was Barry and Helen. They were both killed off towards the end of the movie. And Barry, I literally said this watching the film. I'm like, yeah, adios, Barry. Wasn't really rooting for you too much. Yeah, adios. I wasn't really too sad about his death. But, I'll tell you what, though. Helen's death really ticked me off because it's Sarah Michelle Gellar. You can't kill her, Like, come on. And the most annoying part was, like, she almost got away. Like Helen's chase scene towards the end of the film was very intense, and it looked like it was straight out of a Scream movie. And that's a good thing. And she almost got away. She's running down the alley, and the parade is happening right. The street's right there. But then, the killer got to her right at the last minute and got her, And before that happened, she was invited to that year's modeling show because she was last year's winner. So Barry went with her, and Barry was up on the balcony watching her. And then the killer, all the show's going on, the killer snuck up behind Barry and got him too. So now we're down to just Ray and Julie. And at the end of the film, Julie finds out who the identity of the killer is, or she thinks she does anyway. And she finds Ray working on his boat, and she sees some evidence on Ray's boat that makes her believe that he was the one who was hunting down her and the other friends throughout the whole film. So she starts to run away, and Ray starts chasing after her. Then this random fisherman walks in out of nowhere, punches Ray in the face, and tells Julie to get on his boat, and then they just leave the dock. And then Julie runs into one of the rooms on the boat, and then she sees all these pictures all over the place of evidence that makes her realize that the boat that she is now on she's now on the boat of the killer. Like, the room is full of all these pictures of people that she talked to, and then at the last minute she connects the dots that this man is the killer, and he reveals himself to her. and he starts chasing her all over the boat with the giant fish hook. And bro, there was something about this because, like, think about it. She has nowhere to go. They're on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Like the dock is like at least a mile or two away at this point. Like, she has no way to get out the boat, at least for now. And Ray wakes up, gets in one of those little fishermen with those little boats with a motor at the end of it, and starts chasing after the boat. And she's like, and then cut back to Julie. She's running around trying to find places on the boat to hide. She climbs into the cargo bay. Then she eventually climbs inside the storage unit where all the ice is, where you'd put the fish. And while she's digging through the ice trying to get out of it, she finds Helen and Barry's dead bodies, and Max's as well. Because the whole time I'm watching this, I'm just like, where are the bodies? Because the bodies kept disappearing. And just like, where are the bodies? Well, there's your answer. And she battles them for a while. And then Ray eventually catches up to the boat, manages to climb back on, and fights the killer as well to save Julie's life. And eventually, the two of them manage to get him trapped. They get him caught in this line, and it drags him up into the air, and he ends up losing one of his hands, and then he gets thrown into the water. And Julie and Ray think that he's dead, and then the Coast Guard shows up and helps them, but Ben's body is never found, but the police think he'll come up eventually. So it cuts with the two of them, hugging, getting back together, the usual happy ending. But it's not what you think. Cuts to another year later. Ray and Julie are living very happy lives. Julie's back at college, happier than ever, because now she knows she's not a killer. And she thinks everything's fine. She's getting ready to get in the shower, and the room is full of steam. She walks in there and notices some writing on the window, or on the mirror, and it says, "I still know what you did last summer." And she's sitting there all shocked, and it cuts to Ben back in his outfit, smashing through the mirror to grab her, and then it just cuts to black, and that's the ending. Like, dude, that was straight up just like the original Nightmare on Elm Street's ending, where the main girl thinks that she killed the main bad guy, Freddy Krueger, and then he just pops in through the front door at the end and kills her mom. Like, that's straight out of Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie's ending was intense. Like, that whole sequence of Julie trying to escape Ben was top tier slasher genre done right. It was amazing. And I like how the ending of this sets up the sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It was fantastic. And as far as the story goes, it could not be any more better. And like I said, I consider this to be a very amazing hidden gem from the 90s. I don't think it gets talked about enough. If you are looking for a good slasher film that's underrated to watch with friends or family, I highly recommend this movie. It has stood the test of time, at least in my opinion, and it looks amazing. Like, if I was teaching a horror film class, I would use this as an example on how to do a slasher film the right way. Now, one thing that really ticks me off about this is, like, okay, so you know how like you have these film review pages that give film ratings. Okay, so like I'm looking at them and they're not making any sense. Are you serious? So listen to this. IMDb gives I Know What You Did Last Summer a 5.8 out of 10. Like, okay, that is not fair at all. I do not agree with that rating whatsoever. This film should at least have a solid 7 or 8 out of 10. Or a 7.5 at least. A 5.8? Are you kidding me? Heck no. There is no way. And Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 44%. Like, are you kidding me? That is very bad negativity right there. And Letterboxd, 2.9 out of 5. Like, really? This should be a 4. out of 5 at the very least. Those reviews make no sense to me whatsoever. This film is so much better than that. And another fun little fact for you, this movie had a budget of $17 million and ended up grossing $125.3 million. So it was, I guess you could say this movie was kind of a sleeper hit. But hey, it made its money back. And the director for this film is a director by the name of Jim Gillespie. And the music was done by John Debney. And before I go any further on this, there's one more scene I want to talk about. So I just realized, another huge fave of mine, of this scene, I consider this to be one of the most intense scenes in the movie. It's a scene where, it's that same scene I was telling you about earlier, where Helen is back at her house, getting ready to go to bed. The killer walks in her bedroom without her seeing it, and she enters her room and goes to bed. And and the killer, I think, was hiding in her closet because Helen's sister walks in, who is a complete jerk, by the way. You find out very quickly that Helen, you really sympathize with her throughout the entire film because, a little more backstory, when the film has that year time jump to after they hide the body, you find out really the 4 friends' lives all took a nosedive, and Helen, her dreams basically fell apart. She went to New York, her modeling career didn't work out, she came back home, and now she's working at her sister's shop. Like, she didn't get to live her dream, and you find out she has a very terrible home life. I think her parents are divorced. Her dad just drinks all the time. Like, she literally walks into the house, he doesn't even look at her. He's just drinking away with his bottle, watching a game. And her sister is a complete jerk. Like, all she cares about is running her shop. Like, her sister walks into the room telling her she has to work in the morning. And she says that she's a pathetic human being because she constantly combs her hair all the time. Because even though Helen stopped modeling anymore, she's still trying to keep up her appearance. And her sister thinks it's stupid. And then, Helen goes to sleep. And she wakes up in the morning and a bunch of her hair was cut off with scissors, and she's wearing her tiara she won last year. And she sees on her mirror, like, the killer wrote in red paint on her mirror, like, "You're next" or something. Then it cuts to her freaking out and screaming. And I'm just like, dude, that whole sequence was insane. Like, when you're in your bed, like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to this. Like, your bedroom is supposed to be your safe space. Like, no one is supposed to harm you, right? So it's like that man straight up invaded her personal space, like her safe room, And, dude, that whole scene was just spooktacular. Fantastic, man. Intense. Perfection. Now, this film did have a few flaws because there's some things that didn't age well. They're just more like nitpicks for me, like with the film. So first off, there's a scene about halfway through the film where Julie is driving her car to go to a suspect's house to get some information, and she hears this kicking sound coming from her trunk. So she pulls over. Now she's in a regular neighborhood, right? And there's no people around, of course. It's the middle of the day. The sun's out in full force. She opens her trunk and Max's dead body is in her trunk covered in crabs. Like dozens of them. Enough to cover the entire body except for his head. And she runs off screaming at the top of her lungs. She closes the trunk, right? And then next scene, she's walking back with Helen and Barry, and she opens the trunk. It's completely empty, looks clean, brand new, no evidence that the crabs or the body were even there. So I'm just like, okay, how did the killer get the body and those crabs out of the trunk that fast and in the middle of the day with no one noticing? I'm like, really? That was really far-fetched, even for me. It's like, I know in some films you have to expand your disbelief a little bit, but I feel like with that, that could have been maybe done a little better. Maybe they could have just left the crabs, but the body's gone or something. The fact that everything's gone and the trunk is completely clean, I'm just like, really? You're telling me no one noticed the killer doing that? But anyway, and there's other times where the killer, like, how did he get the bodies away from the scene without anyone noticing, And of course, towards the end of the film, like, Helen gets arrested, and of course they have to drive down this alley where the killer is waiting for them, and the cop, gets out of the car to go help this guy with his truck who ends up being the killer, and Helen's yelling, "Turn around, it's him." And of course the cop gets gutted. It's just like, dude, cops, in my opinion, every horror film, the cops are so useless. They're just there to be killed in horrific ways. It happens all the time. It's just like, my gosh, cops get it so unfairly in horror films. Like, you want a prime example? Go watch the Halloween 2018 sequel. Man, the cops in that film get destroyed horrifically. Or like, go watch Scream 4. It's just like, dude, cops have just horrifying deaths in some horror films. But I think that's going to wrap it up for my covering of I Know What You Did Last Summer. This film is a hit. I highly recommend you go check it out. This is a very good slasher film done the right way. And before I go, though, I actually just found out that there's actually plans right now that they're making a new sequel to the series with the original actors coming back to reprise their characters. So I think this was the perfect time for me to review this movie, and I'm very excited to see where they'll take this series in the next installment. But like I said, Know What You Did Last Summer, a sleeper hit, hidden gem from the late 90s. I highly recommend you go check it out. I love this movie. Very good. I would have to give it a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. It's a very good underrated slasher film. And that is going to wrap it up for my review of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Hope you enjoyed this recording. And until next time, I am DJ Apollo, and you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.